Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a review of the video game Gears Tactics. I've renamed the channel Agent Aschenbrenner because Aschenbrenner Film and Video Production, it was a lot to say and a lot to tell people when they ask what to search for. Plus, I'm starting to use this channel more for gaming. I would like to do more short film stuff, but I don't know. For now, it's just going to be some gaming stuff. So, film and video production, not the most accurate right now. But Agent Aschenbrenner works. It was just my nickname in high school. Anyway, moving on to the review. Gears Tactics is a top-down strategy video game that is developed by Splash Damage in collaboration with the Coalition. I played this game on Xbox Series X. Gears Tactics was initially released for PC, but the console version was a launch title for the Xbox Series X. And it was the first next-gen game that I played on my new console. By the way, there will be spoilers in this review, so this is a spoiler warning. Now, this isn't the kind of game I would normally play, but since it's a prequel to Gears of War, I was really interested in that, plus the trailer looked really good, and I had heard good things about it. Let's start with the characters. This game has some really cool characters. You've got Gabe Diaz, who is he's pretty similar to Marcus Phoenix. He's a military hero who cares about his team and cares about, protecting humanity, and, he's just a pretty cool dude. He's also joined by several allies, such as Sid Redburn, a more, I guess you could say, battle-hardened soldier. He's a bit older. He's, seen a lot of stuff. Then there's also Michaela, who is a non-COG combatant who joins up with their team later. Later, you also have a civilian named Reyna who joins the team. Now, Reyna joins the team because she has a personal reason to take down Ukon, who is the main villain. We'll talk more about him in a bit. Also, let me take a brief moment to talk about the character customization in this game. You are able to customize outfits and weaponry in this game, and it's really interesting. My Gabe Diaz, I had him wearing a green and dark blue outfit the whole time, and now that's just what I think Gabe Diaz looks like, even though I know other people's, in their campaigns, he might look completely different. I also equipped a green gun for Gabe Diaz, and then I also did some customizing with the other characters. The customization system in this game is actually really cool, and it's just a nice feature. And by the way, your character customization stuff does appear in cutscenes, so that's really cool. Alright, so anyway, back to the characters. Depending on how you play and some other factors, you can have Jack, the robot companion from the original Gears of War trilogy. You can have him on your team, and you can also have Augustus Cole, aka Coltrane, on your team. You get Jack by playing the Campaign Jack game mode. So this game mode, I believe, was introduced to the game with the console launch, and this is the version of the campaign that I played. Now, Jack is a really interesting character. He's got some okay skills at the beginning. He's helpful and all that, but once you start upgrading Jack, this guy can be a serious player in your battles. He has some really, really cool upgrades. Jack can throw shot grenades that prevent bad guys from moving or shooting. He can throw a sonic charge, which takes away their opportunity attacks, which means if you get close to them, they can't attack you if they normally would. He's got a toxic capsule, which he can use to actually poison villains. And Jack actually has a mind control ability where you can temporarily control one of the bad guys. It's really cool. For Coltrane, I'm a little confused how you unlock him. I read that he was a pre-order bonus for the PC version, but I had access to him and I was playing it on console launch with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So he might have been included as a Game Pass Ultimate perk, or maybe if you played the Game Pass version within a certain time frame after its console launch, it was unlocked. I'm not really sure, but the point is, I did have Cole on my team, and he was a lot of fun to play with. One of the cool parts is, if you played the original trilogy, you know that Cole is a former professional athlete who turned soldier, once the war broke out. And in this game, he actually wears his sports outfit as armor, which, in my head, I just think that the story reason behind that is the COG is probably really strapped for resources at this time, so he just had to make do with what he had. He also wields a Retro Lancer, which is cool. Alright, so I just mentioned Cole's weapon, the Retro Lancer. Now, the reason I'm going to segue into this game features character classes, with different classes using different weapons and generally having different abilities. For example, Cole, I believe the class is named Vanguard. They use Retro Lancers. Sid is also a member of this class. Retro Lancers are actually pretty interesting in this game. You can use the charge ability with the bayonet to very good effect. And like I said, Certain enemies, if you get close to them, they'll attack you and mess up that bayonet charge. But Jack's Sonic Capsule can get rid of that. So that's a pretty cool strategy you can use there. Other classes. The support class uses the normal Lancers, the ones with the chainsaws. Gabe Diaz is a member of this class. There is a sniper class, which uses the long shot sniper rifles. I think they're called long shots. Anyway, Michaela Dorn, the non-cog soldier, she uses a sniper rifle. And let's see, it's called Scout, is the one that uses the Nasher shotguns. And is there any other class? Jack is in a, he's not really part of any class. He's completely unique, because he's the robot and he's just there for support roles and stuff like that. Okay, so while we're talking about characters, this game also features, I think they're randomly generated, non-hero characters. Hero characters are characters who were, definitely, central to the story, and if a hero character dies, you have to restart the mission because you can't actually complete a mission if a hero character dies. But non-hero characters, I'm pretty sure they're randomly generated. You can have a bunch of them on your team, and if they die, you actually can continue the mission because they don't affect any of the story cutscenes or anything. But here's the interesting thing. You can still fully customize these non-hero characters. They have names, and, you can give them different skills. They have their own skill trees, all that kind of good stuff. Now, the thing is, if you use a couple of these non-hero characters routinely, you actually might get a little bit attached to them. So you might want to be a little bit careful to not let them get taken out. Because, it adds a little extra layer of tension knowing that you actually could lose these people and continue on. Whereas if Gabe Diaz gets killed, you just restart the mission or the checkpoint and, try again. You're never going to lose Gabe Diaz, but you could lose, one of the soldiers I had, his name was Tyrone. I didn't want Tyrone to get taken out. He was a cool dude. He had a minigun. Oh, that's the other class. The class that uses the minigun. It's called Heavy Class. So you have a lot of good heroes, and then you've got these non-hero characters, which they're really cool, and like I said, you might grow attached to them. They're all fully voice acted and stuff like that. They don't have too much personality, like I said, because they're not in cutscenes and stuff, but they'll still talk to other characters during the fights and stuff, so, they're still pretty cool. Alright, so let's wrap up talking about the characters with Ukon. Ukon is the main villain of this game. He is a locust geneticist and is responsible for a bunch of the monsters that you battle in the original Gears of War trilogy. These include Brumox, Corpsers, and that huge flying monster that Scourge rides in Gears of War 2. I think Ukon was a pretty cool villain for this game, and by cool I mean he's a villain you really want to take down. You see what he's doing, and you want to put a stop to this, ASAP. And it also makes him a little bit cooler knowing that his actions did affect the rest of the original trilogy story because, like I said, his monsters are in the original trilogy. Spoiler alert, I already said this, but you do defeat Ukon at the end of this game. But his monsters are still, out there. They still influence the war going forward. And, that just gives him a little extra depth as a character. Alright, so now that we went over a little bit of the characters, let's just touch on the story real quick. So the basic story is Ukon is this locust geneticist, Gabe Diaz is trying to take him down, and all the other characters have their own reasons for wanting to take him down. And you go on various missions, trying to track him down, battle his monsters, battle his forces, and, basically just take out this dangerous villain. Then, this story actually does have a ton of interesting plot twists, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But for now, I'll leave it at that for the story. I want to talk about the gameplay a bit. The gameplay in this game is really fun. So, it works on a system where you have a certain amount of action points per turn. You usually start with 3. Depending on how you kit out your character, I think sometimes you can get 4. And then certain skills you can use to get more as well. Alright, so action points can be used for stuff like moving or attacking or using skills. Now, skills are special abilities that your characters have. Let's see, for example, one of the skills that Jack has is the Toxic Grenade. Now, a lot of skills work on a cooldown system, so once you use it, you have to wait a few turns before it'll refresh. Like I said, this game is turn-based, so, you use it, wait a couple turns, it'll be usable again. Some other interesting skills are, some characters have Cloak, which makes them hidden. Sometimes there'll be ones where it's you can shoot for a little extra damage, which is, really good, but of course you have that cooldown, so you can't just spam that. Another example would be Stim, which lets support characters heal themselves or others. Now, these skills start off pretty tame, but once you start upgrading them, that's where you get to this interesting stuff. Like I said, some of Jack's later upgrades I already mentioned. Those are cool. Then you've got some other unique ones in there. And the really fun part is when you can have different characters with different skills, and the way you can combine these together and kind of play them off of each other. It's really interesting. Also, since Jack has the ability to mind control the villains, the developers actually did take the time to design all of these skills for the villains as well, to the point where they are playable, because for the characters you can mind control, you can actually access their skills. And I'm pretty sure they have some skills that are exclusive to them. At least I never saw them in any of the other ones, but I didn't fully upgrade every skill tree, so I don't know. The game really does live up to being a strategy game, because it actually did have me going and saying something like, man, I need to change up my strategy. And then I actually did adjust my tactics, and I was actually able to get past the part I was stuck on. So yeah, you definitely got to be thinking, you got to be planning, and it's just a really good game flow. Alright, so let's talk about challenging stuff in the game. This game does get hard at certain points. There are 3 boss fights, which are all really fun. The first is a Brumok, and this one is pretty interesting. It has this rocket launching device, which the rockets take 1 turn to hit. So it'll have like a target on the floor, and you have 1 turn to get out of the way, or else it's going to hit you. Now the cool thing is, all the fights in this game have friendly fire on for you and for the bad guys. So you can end up getting the rockets to take out like the henchmen. So that's really cool. The Brumok also has Gatling guns on its wrists, and there's a really interesting mechanic where you can either choose to target the emulsion tanks on its back, which will damage its health bar, or you can actually target the wrist Gatling guns, and you can disable the guns, which will take away one of its abilities to attack, which can be helpful because it reduces the amount of damage he does to you, but the cost is it doesn't damage his health bar at all, like the overall health bar that you need to drain to win the fight. The other interesting thing is you can only attack the health bar from its back, like when it's turned to you, because the tanks are on its back. Now the thing is, every time you attack the tank, it will turn around, but the level starts it out where you have part of your team on one side, part of the team on the other, so you can shoot it, it'll turn around, then you shoot it, and then it'll turn around, and you just back and forth it a bit. Of course, you also have to deal with some henchmen coming out of emergence holes and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really interesting boss fight. And by the way, for all the boss fights, just as a helpful tip, you might want to look into equipment or skills that help your critical damage. Critical damage plays a big part in these boss fights, and they're also really helpful in normal fights as well. But yeah, so the Brumok fight, that was pretty cool. The second boss fight is against a Corpser, another returning monster from the original Gears of War trilogy. This one is interesting. It has a huge slam attack, which is a big area of denial attack. Basically, it'll cover a huge part of the map. You have 1 turn to get out of the way. And of course, friendly fire is on, so you can trick the bad guys into getting stuck there. It also throws in proximity mines that it deploys, which sometimes the henchmen will walk into, and that's funny. And the other interesting mechanic in this one is it can actually shield itself with its legs, similar to how it does in the other games. So when it does that, it can't attack you, but you also can't attack it. So there's an interesting dynamic in that fight. The final fight was one I didn't really see coming. I knew it was going to be some big monster. At first I thought it was either going to be a monster that Ukon was working on, or Ukon was going to mutate himself into a huge monster. But no, it's actually Ukon riding one of the giant monsters that Scourge was riding in Gears of War 2. So my first thought was correct, but I wasn't expecting that. That didn't even cross my mind that Ukon was responsible for the thing that Scourge rides in Gears of War 2. And that fight was really interesting. Alright, so the level starts off, it splits your team up. You have Sid and Michaela on one side, Gabe, Reyna, and Jack on the other. And by the way, this fight requires you to have all these heroes, so nobody can die during this fight. That adds a little extra challenge in there. Now, the tough part is them being split up, because there are certain parts where it would be useful to have Jack on this side with Sid and Michaela, but he's stuck over here with Gabe and Reyna. So you have to kind of make do with what you have. Now, I actually didn't try to see if Jack could go over to the other side, because what's separating them is some debris on this bridge. Jack is the only character who can fly, so maybe he could fly over it, but I don't know. I didn't try. But anyway, this fight was so cool because all the characters have some pretty good skills at this point. It's the final fight. You're really good and upgraded. I was having so much fun just using different things. I was using Jack's stun abilities so all the reinforcements come out of this like one door on this side. I chucked one of his stun grenades in there and basically stopped all the reinforcements for a few turns. So that was really cool. You have to basically damage the boss, but you also have to avoid its rockets, the same rockets from the Brumok fight. But here's the thing. You also have the same mechanic where you can disable one of its weapon systems at the expense of not damaging the health bar. But here's the thing. If I remember correctly, the rocket launchers, if you disable it, it doesn't stay disabled permanently. So it's definitely not worth it. Although I think I did do it on the one I beat, because it checkpoints in the middle. I know I'm rambling a bit, but this was such a fun game, and I'm just getting pumped up talking about it. Alright, so anyway. It was a tough fight. It was really intense. But yeah, it was so much fun. I was using my skills. I was making do with what I had. I was, trying to get the boss taken down. I was trying to avoid the rockets. I was trying to fight the henchmen. But yeah, it was intense. Alright, so that's what was the boss fights. But let me tell you the actual hardest part of this game. A part I actually wasn't able to beat. It's one of the side missions. And in the side mission, you have to recover some equipment cases while avoiding a Nemesis bombing run. So basically, it'll target a whole area of the map. You have to get out of that area before the turn ends, or these Nemesis bombers will take you out. Now here's the problem. It had a mission modifier, which limited you to 2 actions at the start of your turn. So you normally start with 3, or with certain upgrades 4 sometimes. Or there's a way to get 4 per turn. I think it's like you do something, you have like a certain chance of getting an extra bonus one. Anyway, the problem is 2 points is not a lot to work with when you're trying to outrun the bombs, fight the bad guys, and grab the cases at the same time. So the first time through, I had, I think, 2 hero characters, or maybe 1 hero character on the team. The hero character, they can't die or you restart the mission, and I couldn't get them through. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll try it again with all non-hero characters. That way, if some of them die from the bombs, I can still go forward and try and complete the mission. I really tried on this one. I even had one guy that had the sprint ability. Okay, so the sprint ability, it lets you travel way farther than 1 action point would normally let you, but you have to have a straight shot. So I thought that was super helpful for this. But still, like, just fighting the enemies with this limited amount of action points, I just couldn't get through it. Not to mention, Jack is required on every mission if you're playing campaign Jack. And Jack is a hero, so if he goes down, you lose, and I couldn't keep Jack from going down. And yeah, I couldn't beat it. And fortunately, you don't have to beat every side mission. And I didn't. I just beat a different one to progress the story. I'm sure there are ways to beat it, but no, I just did another side mission. Alright, so I just talked to you about a side mission. Let's talk about a part of the game that did give me mixed feelings, which is the side missions. So normally when you hear side mission in a video game, you think it's an optional objective that you can choose to do, but you don't have to. That's not exactly the case here. So every so often, when you complete a chapter, it will put you into a side mission page. You have to complete all but one of the side missions from the pool, at least for the majority of them. There are some like post-campaign, like end game side missions. I don't know what the regulations are for that, because once I beat the campaign, I was done. But alright, so let's say it gives you a pool of 3 missions. It'll ask you to beat 2 of them, okay? Or if there's 4 missions, it'll ask you to beat 3 of them. And you have to do that to progress to the next story chapter. Now, the side missions are good for a few reasons. One, the gameplay is great, so it just gives you more time to play around with the gameplay, to use the mechanics, and just have a good time. Also, so for every batch of side missions, each character can only be used once. So if you use Gabe and Sid on one mission, and then Michaela and Cole on another mission, then you still have 1 mission left. You would not be able to use any of those characters again, so you would have to use your non-hero characters. This is the part where you actually get to like play more with your non-hero characters, and that's where you start to get that attachment that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, that's a really good thing. The problem is it interrupts the story. Like I said, I enjoyed this story so much, and the problem is, when you got to a set of side missions, it got interrupted. Now, of course, they are part of the story. It's just showing you fighting Ukon's forces on different fronts. But the problem is, you just got done with like an epic cutscene or something, and you're like, okay, I want to see what happens next. Let me get to this next main story mission. Let me see what the next cutscene is. But no, you got to go through these side missions, which they get a little repetitive. Like, it's the same kinds of objectives, like rescue somebody, destroy some emulsion, get a supply crate, get multiple supply crates, hold down areas to get supplies, stuff like that. It wasn't too bad, but once you get to like close to the end of the game where you're like, okay, I'm ready to take down Ukon, let's do this. And there's a batch of, I think you have to complete 3 side missions in it right before the final boss fight, like before the final mission. And I was like, oh, I have to do side missions. And by the way, this batch that I just talked about is the one where that 2-turn bombing run mission is. So yeah, that was a part that gave me mixed feelings. Like, I like that it makes you use your non-hero characters. I like that it gives you more time to play with the mechanics. But the fact that it interrupts the story is just what ground my gears a little bit. Gears. Because it's Gears of War. Anyway. Alright, so let's go back to talking a little bit more about the story, and then we're also going to talk about the cinematic presentation. So, one thing about the story is it's got some intense plot twists. The biggest one is the fact that they learn that the Locusts, like the bad guys of the original Gears of War trilogy, they're actually the result of a cog experiment that was trying to cure a certain disease. So, the Locusts are either humans who were mutated or animals that were mutated when they were doing this experiment, or maybe both. Like, maybe the wretches used to be animals and the, like the normal-looking ones, like, you know, the standard ones were humans. You know the one I'm talking about, like the ones that are big and gray, and they kind of walk and move like humans, and they hold weapons the same way humans do. Okay, anyway. So you learn that this is all part of a cog experiment, which I didn't even consider that when I was playing the original trilogy, but now it kind of makes you think like, oh, so that is what was actually happening the whole time. And at the end of this game, the characters from this game decide to keep that a secret, which is why Marcus and his crew never knew. But anyway, so that was a pretty interesting, an interesting plot twist. It actually does kind of explain a few things. There's like that secret lab in, I think it's Gears of War 2, where there's like those things that burst out of the pods. That's probably connected to this project, which was in this game. In this game, they say it happened at this place called like the New Hope facility or something like that. So that lab you go to in the original trilogy, it's probably connected to this. And it also could help explain why the queen of the Locusts is a human, you know, Queen Mira from the original trilogy. So I guess that kind of actually does fit in with the original trilogy, but man, that was an interesting plot twist. Now let's move on to cinematic presentation. This game is really cinematic. The cutscenes are great. Visually, they look great, and in terms of how they, tell the story, I think they are very well done. Like I said earlier, the character customization appears in most of the cutscenes, at least all of the cutscenes where the characters are wearing their armor, they will appear. Sometimes you'll see Gabe Diaz in like a normal t-shirt or something. Of course, that won't apply because you don't customize the t-shirt, you customize his armor. So the game is normally in a top-down perspective, but sometimes during the battle it will shift to a over-the-shoulder third-person perspective to show like a certain attack or something like that. And it's really cool. It adds a little layer of cinematography to it. It just kind of shows you the action from another point of view, and it's cool. Now, this game didn't need this feature. If it didn't have this feature, it would still be a great game. But it's just something really cool that the developers put in. It's something, just going that extra mile. And it's really interesting. And it shows that they cared about this game and that they wanted to make it the best that they could, Just a really neat little thing that they threw in there. Not to mention, they did really good with the animations. Reload animations, attack animations, moving animations, interacting with machines, or picking stuff up, or opening doors, or opening locks to locust cages, stuff like that. It's all well done, and they also have a unique animation for when Jack does interactions. Like, if you open a door with a human character, it'll look different than if you open it with Jack. And, that's really cool. Okay, let's wrap up the review. So, in terms of story, this game did great. In terms of gameplay, this game did great. In terms of characters, they really did great. And just looking at this game, I think it's a great game. And it's just a lot of fun to play. This is a great game. It's a great prequel to Gears of War. And I very much enjoyed playing this game. Thank you for checking out my review of Gears Tactics. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like it, and have a great day.